hand cannons were a major focal point for Bungie upon the launch of Beyond Light. Not only did they make some performance adjustments to the weapon type, but they completely removed the entire 150 RPM archetype and placed them into the 140 archetype pool. They also created a completely new archetype by changing all of the 110 RPM archetypes and making them a 120 RPM. So all in all, we have 120, 140, and 180 RPM hand cannons. But which ones end up being the most effective in PvP? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Man of Coal, and today, let's talk about the best hand cannons to use in PvP. Alright, so I want to start off this video by going over my criteria for choosing the weapons that I did. There are 3 pieces of criteria that these hand cannons had to meet in order to make this list today. First of all, these weapons are based solely on their individual performance in PvP, and I'm not taking into account the impact of any exotic armor pieces, nor any other weapons that have an impact on them. These weapons are just being considered based on how they perform by themselves in the Crucible. The second thing is that these weapons had to be relatively accessible to the average player. If the path to obtain the certain hand cannon was relatively easy to do, then it could make the list. The last thing, and probably the most important, is that the hand cannons had to have good perk combinations and stats. If the weapon had good stats or had the potential to roll good perks on it, it made the list. So let's move on to our first weapon on our list today, the Ace of Spades. Much to no one's surprise, if you've played any PvP since Beyond Light launched, this weapon has made its resurgence into the PvP meta. With an optimal time to kill of 0.87 seconds, the Ace of Spades is an exotic 140 RPM hand cannon that can now be obtained from the Monument to Lost Lights exotic archive located right next to the vaults in the tower. It will cost you 1 exotic cipher, which can be obtained by doing a quest from Xur or by reaching level 55 in the season pass, 125,000 glimmer, 200 planetary materials, and 1 ascendant shard. Honestly, for that price, this weapon is 100% totally worth getting. And with an exotic perk like Memento Mori, which says that reloading after a kill grants the magazine with 6 extra damage bullets and grants your radar while still aiming down sights, the lethality of this weapon significantly goes up. The great thing about the 6 Memento Mori bullets is that the only way you can lose them is if you switch to a different weapon or you use them. They aren't set to a timer like perks such as Kill Clip and Rampage are. The selling point for me though is the actual stats of the gun. Despite being a 140 archetype, the Ace of Spades is rocking a whopping 78 range stat, which is the highest range stat of any hand cannon in the game, not counting Ariana's Vow. And with this recent sandbox update, the range stat on hand cannons now affects damage drop off even more. So hand cannons with higher range stats are going to be more effective at longer ranges than they were previously. Ace of Spades is a very safe choice to use in PvP. It's a relatively easy weapon to use both on mouse and keyboard and controller, and has some really solid stats and perk combinations that make it super effective in PvP. If you don't already have it, it's definitely worth grinding out the necessary materials to do so. The next hand cannon on our list today is Thorn. Again, much to no one's surprise, Thorn is still a top tier hand cannon to use in PvP. Despite being a victim to the 150 RPMs moving to the 140 RPMs, Thorn still has an optimal time to kill of 0.87 seconds and can also be obtained from the Monument to Lost Lights exotic archive in the tower. The main selling point for Thorn is the synergy between its 2 damage over time perks, Mark of the Devourer and Soul Devourer. Essentially, each bullet you register on an opponent will end up doing some damage over time. If you end up killing that opponent, their body will leave behind a remnant. If you move your character over that remnant, you will earn a slight damage buff to your damage over time effect. Thorn is another great hand cannon to take into the Crucible, not just for its unique damage over time effect, but because its base stats are relatively good, and the recoil is very easy to control. If you're someone who struggles with maintaining steady recoil on hand cannons, then Thorn might be one of your better options. Let's move on to some legendary hand cannons and start with the Old Fashioned. The Old Fashioned is a 140 RPM kinetic hand cannon that can be earned by literally doing anything in the game. Yes, it is part of the general world loot pool, so any legendary engram that you earn has a chance at dropping the Old Fashioned, which I guess is a good and bad thing. Good because you can get it by doing something as simple as killing a dreg. Bad because there is real no targeted way to farm for it. The Old Fashioned has an optimal time to kill of 0.87 seconds and has a recoil direction value of 95. In terms of what perks to look out for, obviously it's all your preference, but some perk combos I'll be looking for are Slide Shot and Kill Clip, Feeding Frenzy and Kill Clip, and Quick Draw and Kill Clip. There are a few other perks that I'd also be okay with, like Snapshot, Moving Target, and even Demolitionist. Overall, the Old Fashioned is a solid choice and has a relatively easy way of being obtained, which is why it made the list today. Next, let's talk about one of the more popular PvP hand cannons, Dire Promise. Dire Promise, much like the Old Fashioned, is a kinetic 140 RPM hand cannon that can be acquired as a general world drop legendary engram. Dire Promise has an optimal time to kill of 0.87 seconds and has a recoil direction value of 84. Dire Promise makes the list today not only for its accessibility, but also for its possible perk combinations. One of the absolute best rolls you can get on this weapon is Opening Shot and Rangefinder. Because with the range stat on hand cannons making more of an impact on damage falloff, you're going to want all the help you can get from the perks on your gun. You've also got the capability of rolling Snapshot and Swashbuckler, both very solid perks to use in PvP. Overall, Dire Promise is another great option as a kinetic hand cannon, and some really good possible perk combinations. Alright, before we get into some 120 RPM hand cannon options, if you've enjoyed the video so far, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're really close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, so make sure you click the subscribe button and click the bell so that you know when more of my videos are posted. Let's start with the Iron Banner hand cannon Criminal's Dagger. Criminal's Dagger has an optimal time to kill of 1.0 seconds and a recoil direction value of 98. Now, since we haven't yet had an Iron Banner since the launch of Beyond Light as of the making of this video, I'm not sure if this weapon is still obtainable through Iron Banner rank up packages or not. However, for those of you that have one, it may be worth taking a look into what your rolls are. With perk combinations like Outlaw Kill Clip, Rangefinder Opening Shot, Snapshot, and Zen Moment, this weapon's got some real potential in PvP. And again, with the range stat meaning more now, 120 hand cannons naturally have a higher base range stat, meaning you'll likely be able to outduel a 140's effective range. Criminal's Dagger, keep an eye on this one once Iron Banner comes back around. Speaking of Iron Banner, it looks as though there is a new 120 hand cannon that is obtainable from Iron Banner this season, and that is the next weapon on our list, the Steady Hand. The Steady Hand has an optimal time to kill of 1.0 seconds and has some real potential with its possible perk combinations. There are a couple that really intrigue me though. The first being the new perk Wellspring, which states that kills with this weapon generate ability energy. This energy is divided between your uncharged abilities. So in other words, it will determine between your grenade, melee, and class ability which abilities earn that extra energy, or whether or not you have a charge for it or not. Seems like a pretty unique perk, but we'll have to wait and see how much energy it actually grants. The other perk I'm excited for is Iron Grip, which grants plus 20 stability, but minus 40 reload speed. If the plus 20 stability ends up being as significant as I think it might be, then getting the perk combination of Outlaw and Iron Grip might be one of the best rolls to get for this weapon. The Steady Hand seems to have a lot of potential going forward. The last legendary 120 hand cannon on the list today is True Prophecy. True Prophecy has an optimal time to kill of 1.0 seconds and a recoil direction value of 93. This weapon was initially brought into the loot pool back in the first year of Destiny 2 as part of the Future War Cult faction. The main parts of this weapon that attract me are its possible perk combinations and its accessibility. True Prophecy is also a part of the general world loot pool, which makes it a little easier to obtain. In terms of how the actual weapon behaves, if you have had any experience with the better Devil's Hand Cannon, they perform in a very similar way. Recoil may behave a little more severely for True Prophecy, but in terms of aesthetics and sounds, they are almost identical. Overall, True Prophecy certainly has its place in the Crucible right now thanks to the recent 120 hand cannon buff. If slow firing hand cannons are your thing, then make sure you keep any good rolls. At this point in the video, I wanted to throw out some honorable mentions. These are weapons that didn't quite make the list, yet I still think they could be very effective given the right circumstances. The first honorable mention is the exotic 3-burst hand cannon Crimson. I've always really enjoyed Crimson as a weapon, and with the Catalyst, you can really bump up that effective range. The 3-burst is easy to adjust to because it behaves almost identically to a pulse rifle. However, one of the big knocks I have on it is just that, its lack of effective range. You'd probably be better off using a standard hand cannon with higher range than trying to hit all 3 bursts on a Crimson for less damage. Its exotic perk, which heals you and reloads the weapon after getting a kill, is really nice when you can get to use it. Again, Crimson is one of my favorite weapons to use in PvP. Give it a shot if you're looking for a little bit of a different hand cannon experience. Next honorable mention is going to be a 140 RPM hand cannon Ancient Gospel. Ancient Gospel is a hand cannon that can be earned from the Garden of Salvation raid. I really like the potential perk combinations that this weapon has on it. Rapid Hit, Kill Clip, Outlaw, Rangefinder, there are quite a few good combos to roll with this weapon for PvP. However, the only reason Ancient Gospel didn't make the original list is simply because of its inaccessibility. The fact that it's locked behind doing and completing raid encounters is what makes this weapon a little more difficult to get. On top of that, you're not even really guaranteed to get this weapon to drop, let alone get the roll that you like. The limited number of opportunities to earn this weapon are the only thing that's holding it back for me. If you are someone who likes doing raids or is interested in doing them in the future, then definitely go after the Ancient Gospel. Speaking of, if you are interested in joining our Destiny clan, I've got a link to join down below in the description. We've got over 30 members that enjoy doing all kinds of things from PvP to PvE and everything in between. So if you're looking for people to do the new Deepstone Crypt raid with, go ahead and click the link down below to join our clan. The next honorable mention is a pretty unique one, and that's going to be the 120 RPM exotic hand cannon Sturm. Sturm has a lot of potential in PvP. With its already high base stat numbers, Sturm feels like it could be solid just on its own. However, with its exotic perks, Accomplice and Storm and Stress, you can have some really nice synergy between Sturm and its energy sidearm supplement, Drang. By pairing these two weapons together, you can really start pumping out some high damage numbers. The only real knock I have on this weapon is that it does need the use of another weapon to really get the full effectiveness of itself. And if you recall part of my criteria for the beginning of this video, I wanted to place weapons on the list solely based on their individual performance alone, not with the help of any exotic armor pieces nor other weapons. And with the current meta, shotguns and even snipers still are very prominent as special weapons in PvP. Though you could still have some success, I just think there are better loadouts to run. The last honorable mention for today is Nation of Beasts, which is a 140 RPM hand cannon that can be earned from doing the Last Wish raid. Nation of Beasts is basically in the same boat as Ancient Gospel is. It's a hand cannon that can roll some really nice perks for PvP. However, it is locked behind the loot pool of a raid, and with only a small portion of the Destiny player base even attempting to do raids, I just didn't feel comfortable placing it on the list with such low accessibility rate. Again, if you're someone who likes to do raids or is interested in doing raids in the future, look out for any decent rolls on Nation of Beasts. What do you think of the weapons on this list? Let me know down in the comments what you think, or if you think there should be other hand cannons on this list. I'd love to hear about them. We are close to 1,000 subscribers, so if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Links to my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and Destiny clan are all in the description box below. Thank you all very much for watching. A positive rating is always appreciated, and as always, we'll see ya.